I'd like to call to order the March meeting of the Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll.
Curtis Brown,
Present.
Jonathan Repass,
Present.
Doug Lloyd,
Present.
Riley Lovingood,
Present.
Cecil Anderson,
Present.
John Elliott, Sherry Garrett,
Present.
Rebecca Longmire,
Present.
Paul Huff.
Present.
8 members present.
Thank you. If we could join in for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Members of the Board of Zoning Appeals are volunteers from each commission district who do not receive compensation for their work on the board or training they attend. As a quasi-judicial body, we avoid ex parte communication and conduct our business in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. My name is Paul Huff. I'm the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals. To my right is Vice Chairman Curtis Brown, and to his right is our law director, Mike Moyers. Are there additional people present? Knox County Codes?
Yes, today you have myself, Steve Elliott, you have Miranda Ward, Kelly Vaughn, and Mike Reynolds from Knox Planning. I have other staff members available to answer any questions or concerns you guys may have today.
Thank you. Our voting procedure requires a simple majority of the board members present. Today there are 8 members present, so we'll require a vote of 5 affirmative to pass any motion. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting?
Second.
Motion's been made and approved, or seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals is authorized to grant variances and hear other matters by the Tennessee Code and the Knox County Zoning Ordinance, specifically Ordinance 6.60, Board of Zoning Appeals. These laws prescribe strict parameters, the meeting of which is required to grant a variance. The burden of proof that an application meets these parameters rests on the applicant. Quoting from Knox County Ordinance 6.60.04, the purpose of the variance is to modify the strict application of the specific requirements of this ordinance in the case of exceptionally irregular, narrow, shallow, or steep lots, or other exceptional physical conditions whereby such strict application would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship, which would deprive an owner the reasonable use of their land. The variance shall be used only where necessary to overcome some obstacle that is preventing an owner from using their property as the zoning ordinance intended. For each matter, the clerk will read the request into the record. The chair will then ask if the applicant is present. The chair will then ask if there is opposition or other speakers who wish to present. You do not have to come forward at that time. Once we determine the speakers for the item, we will call on government agencies such as Knox County Codes, Planning, or Engineering to make statements regarding the facts pertinent to the property and background of the request. Board members may ask questions of the governmental agencies once they have made their statements. The chair will then call on the applicant to come forward and state their name and address for the record and present their evidence and reasoning supporting the granting of a variance. This next part is very important today. If there is no opposition, the applicant has 10 minutes to present their case. If there is opposition, the applicant and opposition have up to 15 minutes. After the applicant's presentation, the board may ask questions of the applicant. The chair will then call on the opposition or other parties who have up to 15 minutes to speak. This 15 minutes applies to all parties. So if there are multiple parties that wish to speak, please determine how you're going to divide your time beforehand. After the opponents present their opposition, the board members may ask questions of the opponents. Finally, there will be a discussion of the case by the board, during which time the board members may ask further questions of parties that have already testified. The board will then make any determination it deems necessary. Our bylaws allow an applicant at the initial hearing of the matter to request a deferral of 30 or 60 days without prejudice. In the event of a deferral of an application or failure to appear, any opponent or opponents may be heard on the record at a meeting where the application they oppose appears on the agenda. Mr. Moyers, would you please swear in the speakers?
All right, anybody who's going to speak to this board today on any item on the agenda, please stand and raise your right hand, please. If you're going to speak to this board, please stand, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, be seated.
Are there any changes to the agenda or corrections?
Yes. On item 4G, the applicant wishes to withdraw his request.
Okay, 4G has been withdrawn. Any other changes?
Yes, for item 4E, the applicant wishes to change the request from 20 to 6 feet to 20 to 14 feet.
Okay,
And then there were some CLT map revisions for 4J and 4K. Did the clerk get those? No. For items 4J and 4K, the CLT map number should be 133, not 131.
CLT 133, not 131?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes,
think
for
that's
both
al-
of them.
I think that's already on the application.
Yes, on there.
Yeah. Okay. So that technically is not a change. Anything else, Steve?
It was, I'm sorry, to correct, we corrected it on the applications, but I think it was incorrect on the one we sent to the clerk. So we just want to make sure she had it correct.
Okay. Okay.
Is that the email that you sent me, Kim? Okay, then I have them, yes, thank you.
We'll start with item 4A. Clerk, if you could read the item.
4A is a request of Vogue Tower Partners, 7 LLC, Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless, for waiver to reduce the required landscaping buffer from 12 feet to 5 feet, and for waiver to reduce the minimum perimeter fence setback from 25 feet to 8 feet, located at 2635 Byington Solway Road, CLT map 090, parcel 12305, property zone I in the 6th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Is there any opposition? Any statements from Knox County Codes on this?
We have none at this time.
If the applicant would come forward, please state your name and address for the record. Kelly, if you could turn the mic on.
Should be on. It's on.
It's on, okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Sandifer, project manager representing Vogue Towers in the development of this site. We are currently proposing a 180-foot monopole multi-provider communications facility with Verizon Wireless as a co-applicant here and the initial tenant on this property. We are working through with staff what is deemed under the ordinance as a type 1 installation, but we were seeking relief for 2 items. One is, as was read, the landscaping. Under the telecom ordinance, it requires a 12-foot landscaping buffer, and given the odd shape over here where it's pressed in on this property, simply don't have that much lease space to operate within. We are showing a 5-foot landscaping buffer, and so that's the request, to go from the 12-foot under the ordinance to a 5-foot landscaping buffer. That area, as it was shown on the aerial, is also all wooded from their existing location and their existing fence. It's only this, along with the fence setback buffer, would only really impact the primary road On the east side, you see where it's going towards that single-lane tunnel, and then to the south is the railroad right-of-way. So it's not necessarily anything along several roads that'll be impacted. It's just that single road right there in the front on the north side. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the site or the process.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I have a couple.
Well, I have one if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The property already has a wooded area there, you said, that acts rather like a buffer.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, what sort of trees are there? Are they all deciduous or are there evergreens? What are,
It's a mix. It's a lot of scrub and a mix of trees.
all right, thank you.
There was just a second ago, they had the street view.
Those appear to be mainly deciduous and don't act really as a buffer unless the leaves are on it, so. All
Well,
right, thank you.
True.
So are you counting on the existing trees to be part of the buffer around this facility?
Well, we noted that there obviously is existing vegetation, so that would add some level of buffer. Granted, maybe not year-round. We are proposing to put landscaping around there. The location of this being right next to the right-of-way, and just to the south of that is a large, high-power line running that must be about 150 to 200-foot easement, I would assume. So it's an industrial area to start with, and has kind of a utility nature around it.
Is there any reason why your leased area does not extend all the way out to the property line, or excuse me, the right-of-way line on Byington Solway and the L&N Railroad?
That was just a matter of how much lease space was to be granted by the property owner. This actual site has gone through a number of locations, trying to find something in this area for Verizon's extended coverage. Looking at, including the candidate here, there were 7 other parcels that were attempted along this area.
Well, I don't mean to cut you short, but that really isn't our issue. The issue is this site. And
Right.
whether it will meet the requirements of the ordinance, or whether it can meet the requirements of the ordinance, with or without a variance.
Chair,
Yes.
may I ask, looking at the map, the railroad is on, the plot is almost triangular as I look at it.
Yes, ma'am.
Does it have railroads on 2 of the sides? I see one big one. Is there another, like a little branch of one?
So the railroad right-of-way runs along the south, almost an east-west pattern, a little bit going northeast slightly there. The road, the right-of-way there is that, I don't know if you're familiar with that single-lane tunnel.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So the railroad covers essentially the south side of that property as far as the railroad easement or right-of-way.
So just to flesh this out a little bit more, if you had property all the way to the right-of-way lines on the 3 sides, north, east, and south sides, would you have room for a 12-foot buffer?
Well, let me look. To the east, where that road is, no. The fence, I don't know that, maybe to the south, to the railroad side, but I don't know to the north or the east, it would still meet it right there. There's the next page is more of a zoom in. So right up here where you see the right-of-way at the, kind of the top right corner, other corner here of the compound area, it's almost up, the lease area is almost touching the right-of-way. It's possible along that north side to meet a 12-foot landscaping buffer, but right where you get to the edge and that right-of-way turns towards that tunnel, we're abutting up to it completely.
Chair, may I add, I think some of the confusion we had upstairs is the right-of-way on KJS doesn't match the right-of-way from the plat. So this is the actual right-of-way from the plat. The right-of-way shown on KJS is showing it to the center line of the road. So that's a mapping area on KJS.
Out there to the east? Yeah.
Yes, that's
It's
correct, to
down
the
the
east.
road.
See, on that map there, the right-of-way line showing being all the way to the center of the road, and that's, according to the plat he's provided, that's not correct. Or the survey, I'm sorry.
Sherry, you have a question?
I do. I understand the landscaping buffer. Let's talk about the fencing. Is that the same issue you're having with the fencing?
Correct.
I noticed on page C1 of the overall site plan, there's an area where it talks about a reduced fall zone. Can you explain that to me, please?
Yes, ma'am. So the tower is a monopole structure, so it's the round tubular type tower you see, like a lot of utility poles. The reduced fall zone is when this is designed, it's 180 feet tall, but it's designed with what essentially a failure point in the event of anything catastrophic, similar to like a golf club shaft or an umbrella that gets a kink in it and bends. So this is designed with what they refer to in the engineering side as a reduced fall zone, meaning it'll be designed at a certain point to essentially fail there in that catastrophic event, and so the top part will just go over onto the bottom. And so essentially the bottom is over-designed and the foundation is over-designed.
Will reducing the fencing have any effect on that fall zone?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. The safety of the site remains the same. It's just this fence will be, under the ordinance for the telecom site, the fencing will be within 25 feet of that property line.
I thought I read somewhere in the application that the fencing setback was no longer an issue. It meets the requirement. Is that correct? Or is it still an issue? The setback from the property line to
Were
the
you
fence
asking-
is still an issue? I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. I didn't know which one. Yes. So, I mean, the way I understand the ordinance, and anyone can speak in here, but the way I understand the ordinance, in the industrial zone area, you require the any fence line to be 25 feet off property lines. So we would still need that relief, given the small odd shape of this parcel on the east side here. Essentially, to meet that where this is located, you're eliminating almost half that property on the north-south side. But if you were to come in 25 feet on either side.
I think our 15 minutes is up. Can't you?
He's got 30 seconds.
You have 30 seconds left to tell us anything else that would help us understand.
Okay, well, these are the two items for relief. I mean, from the standpoint of the major safety items, we meet the ordinance and the application meets all the other criteria as far as setbacks from other poles, other tower structures, the fall zone setback for the tower buffer, et cetera. So just seeking relief from these two items.
Okay. I understand there is opposition to this. If you would come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kevin Murphy, 4508 Murphy Road. I'm speaking on behalf of the Board of Scenic Knoxville today. We're here in opposition to this variance request, in particular the request for the reduction in required landscaping. If I may, just point you out to the requirements for granting a variance, which you all are pretty familiar with, but this case is almost pretty cut and dry just on this. So in order to grant a variance, that's only to be used where necessary to overcome some obstacle preventing an owner from using their property as the ordinance intended. And more importantly, down in your ordinance for granting a variance, for reasons that you'd have to set forth, you'd have to say that the strict application of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the owner of any reasonable use of their land. Now, on this property, this land is zoned industrial. The owner owns not only this parcel where this proposed wireless facility is, but they also own the parcel to the west of it. And across both those parcels, they currently have a paper box manufacturing business. So manufacturing is indeed listed as a permitted use in the industrial zone. This owner has reasonable use of their property already. There's a couple of things, I cannot recall the case, but there is some case law around in land use that if an owner owns two adjoining pieces of property, that they get the if they're trying to say, well, one of them's too small, well, simply and I can't get use of it, they can go and cross that property line because and they can go use that second piece of property to allow, to give themselves enough room or anything for that use. So this owner indeed has full use of their property already. What they're doing is they're asking for an additional, a second use. It's not an accessory use. In this case, it's a second full use that's a permitted use. And in this case, this would be like if I owned a piece of CA zone property. I already had a little commercial store there, and I came to you and I said, well, I want a bunch of reductions in setbacks so I can put a house on this. I've got a 1 acre parcel. I'm using half of it for a store. Or maybe I'm using 2/3. And I want to put a house in. But they come and say, well, I already want, I want a house there too. Well, I've already got my commercial use. I've got reasonable use of it. So in this case, I think it's really difficult to say that the owner of the property is being denied any reasonable use of their land. Now, even if you did reach that threshold, then this landscaping ordinance is there, and it has a couple of specific criteria. It requires the planting of evergreen trees, 12-foot deep, in order to provide a obstructed buffer that you can't see through, and it does specify evergreen. By trying to use some of the existing shrubs in there and deciduous as well as trees, that's not the same. That doesn't have the same effect. And the intent of that landscaping ordinance was to hide all of that wireless communication facility equipment in there. They have talked about some of the existing vegetation. Just realize a lot of that they propose to exist would actually live in the county right away. And the county can, of course, come along and later say we need to widen or we need to put a turn lane in, and then that vegetative buffer would be gone. So by granting the reduction of the landscaping width, it really reduces the effectiveness of that buffer landscape there. It is great if they can retain any of the trees, but of course they're going to be doing construction there, so that construction is going to impact the tree root system as well. So I don't think you can assume that all the trees that are there, even if they're in the if they are technically undisturbed, would still survive long term. So for those reasons, Scenic Knoxville is asking you to deny this variance request. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have two questions, one for our attorney. Mr. Murphy stated that the owner has two parcels. We're dealing with a company that has leased that property. How do we reconcile that, I guess, is what I'm asking you.
Well, the applicant, I think, is the lessor, not the landlord. But I think what Mr. Murphy is saying is that variances are supposed to be granted when you have no valid use of your property. Mr. Murphy's argument is the owner of this property, person from whom the tower company is leasing the land already has a use on their property, and that therefore it would be his opinion that denying the variance will not deny the landowner the use of his property. Whether owner can include person who leases property is up to you. I haven't researched that point to tell whether it makes a difference. I guess the question I would have is the applicant able to lease any more land or enough more land that they could make this fit? Because the danger would be that a party leasing a property for a specific use like this could lease a very small piece of land and then argue that he can't meet any of the setbacks or vegetative barriers or anything else. So to an extent, if you lease a piece of land that's too small to meet the required setbacks, have you created your own hardship? And that's the thing I think you have to kind of consider.
Okay, so we consider the owner of the land versus the applicant in this case.
They are two different people. Now, the person leasing the land has all use and control of the property. So in every way except in terms of a title fee, they are effectively the owner of that space. But as I say, it's rather as if I were able to cut, and I couldn't with planning, but if I were able to cut properties into little tiny parcels, just big enough to put a house on, and then built a bunch of houses, and the owners came, or the people building say, well, I need variances because my lot's too small, then you start getting into, the concept of self-created hardships. The same kind of issue applies with a lease, right? You've got, let's say you have a piece of land that's 500 yards square, plenty big enough to build something like this, but you lease only a small portion of it to put up a tower or whatever. If you can't meet the setbacks because of the size of the parcel that you have leased, have you created your own hardship? And I don't know whether that's the case here or not, but.
Okay, so if that would be the only property that the owner would lease, whether because he has an additional commercial property on it or whatever, does that make a difference?
Well,
There's more land there.
Yeah, I would think so.
there's several things going on here. I don't know as I sit here whether there's more space on this parcel that is unused to where the leasehold could be expanded large enough that they can meet the setbacks. If so, that could be an answer for this applicant. Beyond that, because the applicant is looking to lease rather than purchase land, is there other land that would be suitable that they could lease and meet the setbacks rather than this one? If there isn't, and I heard the applicant saying they've been looking for a place and haven't found one successfully, then it may be, if this is the only land that's available, we understand that there's a lot of technological issues. It's like you can put a house down just about anywhere, but you can't put a cell tower down just about anywhere because it has to meet the technical requirements for the tower company. So if this is the only place that was available that meets the technical requirements, then that makes a difference as well. But again, these are facts that I don't know the answer to, or questions I don't know the answer to.
Well, we might be able to find out in a minute. Would the applicant please come back to the podium, please?
Yes, so
Is it possible for you to lease more land from the landowner?
similar to the other discussion, so ideally, we would love to have more space because this is a small, compact, odd-shaped facility. The property owner here that was willing to do a deal wanted it a certain distance away from their existing building. Whether they have plans to expand, use the additional, I don't know. They were adamant that it had to be a certain distance. That's why it's located over here. Even leasing, even if we were successful in getting that additional space to the right-of-way, it still doesn't meet everything, and we can't go west because, again, whether they have future use plan, I don't know. This was a candidate where a property owner eventually agreed. Like I mentioned, there's 7 or 8 that we have gone through in trying to find something in the area that someone would either say yes, or you could come to terms, either financially or legally. And so this is, ideally, we would love to have a 70 by 70 square, makes life easy and it's easy to work within. So this is less than ideal, but it's the site we have right now. I can read you the different parcels and, owners and.
No, that's okay. And I apologize for coughing. I've been pollinated like so many of the others around us, I think. I have another question for codes this time. If the buffer of, I'm going to call them native trees, they're kind of native, they're kind of not, is left, could evergreens be planted behind them or amongst them in some way that would mitigate the appearance?
Now that I've looked at this and that existing vegetation's in the right-of-way, I think Knox County would be in opposition to adding additional vegetation to our right-of-way. And as we talked upstairs, us being the property owner, we couldn't promise you that vegetation would remain if it ever started causing a sight distance issue, or if it died out, we would go take it down and wouldn't put it back. So I don't think we would want a buffer for a cell tower. I don't think we'd want the landscaping screen for a cell tower to be in our right-of-way.
I don't think she was talking about in the right-of-way. I think she was talking about in the distance between the lease line and the right-of-way.
Oh, we wouldn't be in opposition to that if they could reach that agreement with the party. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a problem with it.
So adding evergreens to an area to mitigate the deciduous tree problem.
Yes, as long as it wasn't in our right-of-way, we wouldn't have an issue with that. So there's a small triangle in there of property that the business is going to retain, and then the square for the cell tower, you're talking in that area. Yes,
Okay.
yes, codes wouldn't have an issue with that.
All right, thank you. I think that's all, sir.
Well, I guess I'm just going to stress one point. I would feel a lot better about this. Yes, it is an irregular piece of property, which means it could be eligible for a variance, but it doesn't meet any of the other criteria that I can see. And I haven't heard yet a reasonable explanation as to why the lease line doesn't coincide with the right-of-way line on the north, east, and south side. I can't fathom what the existing property owner has in mind for that little strip of property there. Perhaps you can enlighten us, or perhaps the owner could.
To the west, or,
North, east,
to the north and the
south.
east right there? I mean, to the south is the railroad right away, so aesthetically speaking, there's not a lot in the landscaping it's going to do right there. It's a 100-foot wide easement or right away. To the north, whether or not we could lease additional space or even donate trees all the way to the right-of-way line to increase the buffer, I still don't know that we're going to get all the way to 12 feet right there, just given the shape of the property. But I think there is a solution there. In fact, at the top left, it does show, 12 feet, 5 inches. So on that section right there, then the far right-hand side, you're at 8 feet, 7 inches, it looks like. That's to the fence. So outside of that, we're still stuck where we're still in this position of there's only so much land right there to operate within. But if it was an option to install additional evergreen trees along that right-of-way and along the east strip that does go out at an angle, so it does increase as you go south there, I'm sure that could be something can be done, yes.
When you say the south, you're talking about towards the
Right where
railroad?
the hand is right now. I don't know if y'all see that, but right there. I mean, as you get closer to that tunnel right there,
That's not the south, that's the east side.
well, heading south. From the northeast corner, it's only 8 feet, 7 inches. As you head south, the right-of-way line goes away from the site, so it does increase there.
Right.
Okay.
And on the south side, that's the side along the railroad, there's plenty of room for an additional buffer. You agree?
I agree there, but it's a 100-foot railroad right-of-way. From an aesthetic point of view, it's not gaining much.
I'm reasonably sure that the ordinance doesn't say to meet aesthetic requirements, it's a requirement for a 12-foot buffer, period.
Okay. That could certainly be done. It looks like there's 15 feet along that southern line. So yes, there it would it could meet it.
And you can get what you can get on the north side.
Right. We're still in that top corner, though, just roughly 8.5 feet. We're still in the same position that we don't have enough space to operate within to meet that.
A variance for the landscape buffer in that one corner would be much less troublesome than the entire site, in my mind. But again, there is nothing in the criteria for a variance that we've met. Unless you're telling us that if we deny this, you just can't use this site.
I don't know that this site is feasible. I mean, the way it is right now, to come in 12 feet, you practically eliminate the site. Especially coming in and installing a fence 25 feet in, that would eliminate the site.
I'm not asking you to move it in. I'm asking you to move the lease area out so that you can get the maximum use of the property that's
Okay.
there.
So if we were able to essentially get the lease line all the way to the right-of-way to be able to accommodate additional landscaping except for that northeast corner,
Then you've done everything you can do. And
Okay.
if it still doesn't meet, then we may have to issue a variance, because not issuing the variance would be depriving you of the use of the property. But right now, I can't say that.
okay?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I really think that, in my opinion, the leaseor, is that the correct term? The leaseor, is to be considered a de facto owner of the property. So in order to get the best use of the property that is available, I move that we approve a reduction of the required landscaping buffer from 12 feet to 5 feet, especially with the addition of evergreens, and to reduce the minimum perimeter of fence setback from 25 feet to 8 feet.
Motion's been made to approve the, essentially as written, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
No. Please call the roll.
Curtis Brown,
No.
Jonathan Repass,
No.
Doug Lloyd,
No.
Raleigh Lovingood,
Yes.
Cecil Anderson,
Yes.
John Elliott is out, Sherry Garrett,
No.
Rebecca Longmire,
Yes.
Paul Huff.
No. The motion failed to carry. The application's not approved.
So you have to have another motion to deny.
You still need a, no?
It's denied.
I've had people ask the other way, where there's a motion to deny and it fails, it's passed. No, you have to affirmatively approve something.
So it's been denied.
It has been denied.
Okay, moving on to item 4B, please.
4B is a request of Craig Miller for waiver of side yard setback from 5 feet to 2.5 feet at 8458 San Marcos Drive, CLT map 019, Group PF, parcel 006, Zone RA in the 8th Commission District.
Oh, sorry. Is the applicant present? If you would, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Turn the mic on. Sorry.
Craig Miller, 8458 San Marcos Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37938. So I lived at 8454 San Marcos Drive until 2005. I then purchased the 8458 property at that time. And so I'm 40 years old now. My goal, I guess, to live there all my life. You know, my parents lived there, I've lived there. My parents own the property directly behind me and the two lots. I don't know the actual numbers there, but there's the one directly behind 8454 and the one right to the right of them, I think it says 8445 Carr Lane. So if you look at my site map that y'all have seen, my drawing, so forgive me for that, but it's the best I could have done. Try to do it to the best of my ability. I've built a garage there, so the garage is currently there. It took me months to get to this point. The foundation was done, I guess, back in June of last year, and I'm paying for it as I went. Did not take out a loan. Had full permission from my parents and to build it where it was. There was no issue there. And, you know, being in the county, I guess, building a garage, you know, the codes and things like that, I guess novice from that standpoint, not knowing all the ins and outs of everything. And because my parents owned the lot behind me, and obviously they lived beside me, they had no issue with where the garage was built. Aesthetically, and I have current pictures, may or may not be able to see, but I have current pictures of what it looks like now. But I couldn't, the lines, the topography goes down. There's some issues there. I had to get it close to the back line. And obviously, from my standpoint, needed it to be a certain size. Width-wise, there is a propane tank there's that propane tank and then that fixed shed. So I said it was fixed because when I bought it, it was already there. It is on a foundation, a concrete foundation. It could not be moved. There's also a tree that's right behind the propane tank, and that it's a stump now. I don't know if it can see the tree or not, but it's a stump now, but getting rid of that stump would have been a major cost part of it for me. And so again, I was paying cash as we went, not taking out a loan for this. And again, the foundation sat for a while before I had the money to even build the garage. So I guess I'm sorry for building the garage without knowing the permits and all that. But again, full permission from my parents, my father here with me today. At some point, hopefully the Lord comes back before then, but at some point I'll have the property where they live now, and the two adjoining properties, well, three behind them. It joins just barely on the corner. That currently where the arrow is, and then the two trailers that are behind them. But eventually I'll be able to acquire that as well in my name. But I do understand the issue with the lot lines. We did look at potentially moving lot lines with having a survey done. But I checked into that with the county, and that would have been a little bit of an issue with nonconformity, I think was the term used. But that's all I have.
Any comments or questions here? So you have an application that says you need 2.5 feet of clearance, but the building's 2 feet 3 inches from the property line.
Well, so, yeah, sorry. So
it's 2 feet 3 inches is the correct number? That's 2.25.
it's probably, you could split hairs and probably 2, 4.5, to be honest. We found the pin, and that was difficult to find, but the pin is kind of in, it's in the back corner, and there is a fence line there, so just trying to run the fence line and go over, but the fence is over from the pin too. So, a variance of an inch or two, I could have been off on that particular part of it.
We generally consider variances rounded to the nearest foot, so in either case, we should go with 2 feet. So if we just set 2 as the request.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
On codes, I guess, or planning one, if they did move the property line, or at least partially move the property line, would that be a subdivision, a re-subdivision? What would-
Yeah, it'd be just a re-subdivision of those 2 lots. I didn't measure, but I wouldn't think it would make them non-conforming unless they moved the lot line and made the structure to the, I guess I'm gonna call that south, made the lot line too close. I would think they would probably have to put a little bump out in the rear property line to give the space there.
Yeah, there would have to be a jog in the property line on the right side.
So
in
not
order-
the total property line, just that
Just a-
little,
Just
like a little
short
bay
section.
window?
We looked at doing that, and that was the information given to us, was it would be a nonconformity issue.
Could Coach speak to that nonconformity? I'm not
I'm-
sure I quite understand that.
I'm gonna let Mr. Reynolds here speak to it. He's more informed than me.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure why it would be considered a nonconformity. Typically, we don't want to see jogs in property lines, but, I mean, it happens on occasion. So it's definitely a possibility to jog the property line as long as the lot sizes, remain the minimum necessary in the zone district.
Bart Roundtree, Knox County Codes. You're friends with Darson?
I am.
Okay, I know his friend. He called the office to ask. What I didn't want him to do was pay to have a survey done, only to be shut down when he went to get a plat. So I said, hey, be careful. It might be a nonconformity. We don't know. So that's why we led to the variance avenue over the replat at the beginning. Because surveyors cost a lot of money. So that was my thought there.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
So if we approve the variance and the property line is down to 2 feet, is there, and codes, I guess, or planning one, is there some sort of fire protection or something that's going to be required?
Yes, so when a building is within a certain distance to a property line, it has to be protected on that side from fire. And that would be required in your garage. You'd be required to make a 1-hour rated wall. Okay? That has not been discussed. I have not discussed that with the applicant. But that is a side effect of reducing it below a certain distance.
I think you'll need to discuss it with Mr. Miller. I don't think he understands the rating of
Right.
fire and stuff like that. What would be required?
It's very common to come down here and get a variance that triggers this requirement as a side effect or a byproduct of a variance.
Yeah.
You try to help one way, it causes another problem in another.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I hope that clears it up. If you have any other questions, just let me know.
I guess I'm still a little bit confused. The nonconformance that this might trigger, what would that be?
So if he wanted to slide the property line closer to his old house,
No, I'm talking about just making a jog in the property line.
we never discussed a jog.
Okay.
It was to move the entire line.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just summarize I'm sorry, is there any opposition to this? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and summarize what the ordinance says. This is not an irregular site, it's not too narrow, it's not too shallow, it's not too steep, and there are no exceptional physical conditions. Those 5 things are the threshold criteria for making a application eligible for a variance. You haven't met any of them. So,
I was told by the lady who gave me the notice of violation that this is what I had to do.
And if you were told you have to come to BZA and ask for a variance, not sure why you would be told that, but if that's what happened, that's what happened.
Could we see a topography map of the area to see
But-
his
but-
topography issue?
But there are criteria that have to be met before a variance can be granted, and you haven't met them. And they are published. Go ahead, Ms.
No, I just wanted to see, he mentioned topography, and I just wanted to see. I guess, why did you choose that spot for the driveway, for the garage?
Well, I couldn't put it on the other side. There'd been no way.
Because,
Just, I mean, the way that the driveway flows and everything else,
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It would have cost 3 times the amount of money what my house cost me. I mean,
okay. Sir, have you been sworn in?
yes, you did.
I'm his dad.
Could you
We
state
talked
your,
about this.
could you
not
state your
knowing
name and address for the record,
Oh,
please?
excuse me,
Sorry,
my
can't
name,
hear.
can't hear. I've got my ears cranked up, but they still can't hear good. Anyway, my name's William D. Miller. My wife is Diane M. Miller, and she's signed off on this thing. We talked about it for a while because he wanted to do it. Where he built it, and I understand what he was saying about it could be with changing codes, in case there was a fire. This set so far back, it is nowhere near my house or his house. And so it's not, in other words, it's not like it's, fire department couldn't get to it and all that stuff. It's not a way. My garden is exactly the same size as his garage, and it's just basically, because I've got my garden in a little further in than that, it's parallel with it size-wise. And so there's no risk of anything fire towards my house or anybody else's house. The vacant lot behind us, we've already committed to sell that to him. He will be getting this property in my passing and my wife's passing. I'm 76, so I won't be here for that long, I guess. But so we thought there would be no problem whatsoever. And I even told him he could build on the line as far as I was concerned. I wasn't aware that there was a need to come in and, to have something approved ahead of time. I just thought the city was that way, but I didn't know the county would, had the rules too. So I just wanted to say, as far as we're concerned, it's really basically going to be his property, and so it's not a thing of where the next person that comes along is going to be concerned about it either. So I just would like to, say that we have no problem with it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, the way I view it is, I'm happy to make a motion to grant the variance depending upon the insurance of a firewall. So I'm not sure how we would go about that, but that would be my one request, is how we deal with the firewall.
I have a substitute motion because this.
Let's see if there's a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second on this motion?
Second.
I have a substitute motion because this application does not meet any of the 5 criteria to be eligible for a variance. I move that this motion be denied. Is there a second? Substitute motion fails for second. Your motion, Mr. Levingood, your motion again?
I motion to approve the variance on the insurance of a firewall.
And please state in what part of the criteria and.
Misuse of property. Best use of property.
Motion's been made and seconded. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. I'll say no. Motion carries. Moving on.
You understand that you'll need to get with planning or codes talking about doing the fire protection, okay?
Okay.
But that means Your garage is there, but it still needs to be worked on, okay?
Understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item is 4C. It's a request of Jacob Spencer for waiver of side yard setback from 35 feet to 30 feet at 272 South Peters Road, CLT map 132, parcel 040, property zone AG in the 3rd Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Jacob Spencer. The address is 272 South Peters Road. I'm a pastor of a church next door at 268 South Peters. We purchased the house at 272 and that acre lot in November. And our intention is to have a change of use to the building from residential to a church accessory building. But to do that, there's the 35-foot setback requirement, side setback requirement. And the building that is there, the house that is there, that southeastern corner is 30 feet, 9 inches from the property line. We had a surveyor that has done a replat for us to get these two properties re-subdivisioned into one. And that is almost complete. We're waiting on, I believe it's the Board of Health to sign off, but all the others have for the re-subdivision.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any statements from codes?
None at this time.
Has there been any talks with the neighbors, the neighborhood? Is there a problem with any of the neighbors?
There's no known issues. We've got to know several people there. Most of the properties along the road right there are residences that have become commercial properties. So like the title company next door did the closing for us as an example. There's an insurance company a couple houses down. The next door neighbor on that side, I've not met the owner. There's a gentleman that's renting and living there, and he has no issue, but I have not spoken with the property owner.
Did I understand you to say that the survey that you had done was to combine lot 39 and 40 into one lot?
Yes, 268 and 272 would be combined.
Yeah, okay, yeah, 270, 268, and 272.
Yes.
So this is a nonconformance strictly because of use. Is that, am I reading that correctly, Steve?
That is correct, Chairman.
Although technically that's not an exceptional physical condition, it is an exceptional condition that I think certainly falls within the intent of the ordinance criteria. Anybody want to make a motion on this piece of property or this application?
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver of side yard setback from 35 feet to 30 feet.
I'll second that. Motion's been made and seconded. All those approving, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
4D is a request of Cornell Tomescu for waiver of front yard setback from 35 feet to 25 feet at 10042 Pitch Pine Drive, CLT map 017, Group DA, parcel 002, Zone RA in the 7th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Cornell. Cornell Tomescu. My address is 7221 Fairview Road, Corrington, Tennessee 37721. And I'm requesting a setback reduced from 35 to 25 feet in the front because the lot is irregular and it's steep, and I'm not able to fit my septic tank, and I'm not going to be able to have a back deck if the setback is 35 feet. That is all.
Is there opposition to this at all? Any comments from planning or codes?
None at this time.
Okay. Any discussion?
Sir, the health department did come out and check where your septic would go. We have a notice from the health department that there was only one place that your septic line could go. Were you part of that when that was done?
So that's my drawing of the house. I measured it by hand. I didn't have a surveyor do that. So from where I measured, it was the incorrect measurement I took. So when I had the surveyor come out there, he was showing the house to be at a different location, with the house being only 8 feet from the property line. And I wouldn't be able to put a deck in the back if it's that close to the property line. And you could see there the drain line, or the drain field, is not going to be able to fit in the back of the house either. If you see the other from the surveyor, I didn't include the other one where it shows 35 feet. But if you move the house 35 feet in both directions, the back of the house is only going to be 8 feet from the property line, and that does not include the back deck.
So are you saying you need to move the house forward in order to meet the setbacks at the back?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I was confused.
So, on this drawing, yes, that drawing right there, does that show the house the way you want it to sit?
Yes, that's how I want it put. So if I put it right there, you can see the back deck. It's going to be 11 feet from the back property, so I'm able to have a back deck. And in addition to that, there's going to be more space for the drain field and septic tank.
Codes. Is this deck going to be covered?
Say that again?
Is the deck going to be covered?
It's gonna be open deck.
Open deck?
I haven't decided yet. I'd like it to be covered, but if that's not an option, then we can improvise.
It does make a difference, I think.
Actually, I think you're thinking about if it's enclosed or not. Regardless of whether or not it's covered, if it's an open projection, it can go up to 10 feet into the setback.
Okay. So it can be covered, just not enclosed.
Hey, Kelly,
Correct.
it has to be a first-story projection though, right? Is that deck on the first or second story of the house? Is that?
Talking to the applicant.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is that deck going to be on the first or the second story of the house?
It's a one-story,
So
it's
it would
gonna
be,
be.
so
it's
it
gonna
would
be
be
on the
allowed
ground.
then? Right.
Okay,
right.
so
So that
Yes.
would qualify, yes.
it sounds like the deck is not an issue as far as setback is concerned.
Yeah, it would be allowed to project.
Sherry, go ahead.
I'd like to go ahead and make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the waiver of the front yard setback from 35 feet to 25 feet along Pitch Line Drive due to the steep topography, odd shape of the yard, and where the septic system needs to go, along with the reserve.
Yeah, second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is 4E, request of Richard Hill. It's for waiver of front yard setback from 20 feet to 14 feet as amended. Located at 2221 Viewcrest Lane, CLT map 116, Group KA, parcel 029, Zone PR in the 6th Commission District.
Could you please state your name and address?
Richard
for the
Hill,
record?
2529 Windjammer Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37932.
Okay, can you tell us the reasons for your application?
Well, the property has a great slope to it from front to back. There's also a sinkhole drainage easement on the back side of the property. And there's also a culvert pipe, as you can see on that drawing right there, There's the plat. And you can see the sinkhole drainage easement. And all that's narrowing my depth of which I can build the house. If you go back to the attachment showing the house on the property, I have an angled garage, and I'm wanting that one corner to encroach into the 20-foot setback by 6 feet.
Any discussion?
So the front yard setback is going to 14 feet only at that corner of the garage?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Any information from codes?
Only that at the rear of this property is a sinkhole, and it looks like he is building entirely in the sinkhole buffer. As you can see on this map here, L13, L14, and L15 are the rim of the sinkhole, so by ordinance, he wouldn't be allowed to go below that line. So I do feel as though he's using all of the property that he has. He can't back up any further.
Very well. Any other comments from the board? Questions?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to approve the waiver of the front yard setback from 20 feet to 14 feet for the new construction of a garage because not only of the topography and the drainage easements for the sinkhole, but also this allows the owner the best use of the property.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4F, request of Richard Roberts for waiver to extend the CB zoning boundary 100 feet to the east, located at 503 West Brushy Valley Drive, CLT map 046, parcel 011, property zone CB and AG in the 7th Commission District.
Would you, I assume you're the applicant?
Yeah, well, I'm the applicant's son.
Okay, if you could state your name and address for the record?
Yeah, my name is Bob Roberts for Richard Owen Roberts, and it's 503 or 509 West Brushy Valley Drive in Powell, 37849.
Okay, if you could state your reasoning for a variance application?
Well, we don't have a survey. I went up to your map guys and was talking about getting a survey, and he said, what's the big red rectangle? And I said, well, the guy before us built all the trailers for bullet boats, and we're keeping commercial, hoping to get a business started there soon. And he said, well, it doesn't overlay any of the actual buildings. You probably ought to get that fixed, and so here I am.
Okay, let me clarify what I think I just heard. You didn't actually get the commercial business zoning approved. Somebody else did?
Yeah, this has been commercial for a long time, right.
But was it commercial business intended to include your building when it was first approved?
I don't think it included any actual buildings. Most of what you got there is field. So I just assumed it was set there for the purpose of collecting a commercial tax on a portion of the otherwise agricultural property. But I'm told that it would be better for the red zone to actually overlay the building, which would be that one in the top right there.
Okay. Any additional discussion, questions, comments? I'm sorry, Steve.
Yes. We did a little research here while we got down here at the meeting, and as part of this rezoning, it was conditioned, and this is going to be Law Director Moyer's question for him. As part of the rezoning, it was rezoned because the gentleman that lived here before, Mr. Hall, manufactured trailers on the property. As part of the rezoning, it was stated at the rezoning that the use would be restricted to the manufacturers of trailers only, and if that business ever went out, there would be no more commercial business here. They also recorded a covenants that all the property owners signed, including the, Mr. Hall, stating that Mr. Hall was the only one that would ever run a commercial business there, and now he sold the property, so and Mike maybe can explain this a little better, but, I don't know where that leaves us.
I say I haven't had a chance to read through the covenants fully, but that definitely seems like that is the case, that the adjacent property owners who were concerned with the rezoning agreed to not oppose it if the covenants on the property were put in place and then the property got rezoned. I did a little bit more digging too on why the CB zone shows up where it is on the property. I think it is not in the correct spot. It's actually supposed to be a little bit further to the west, over the building the triangle building that's on the, just right above that, right there. That's really where it's supposed to be located, over that building. Because that was the building that was in existence during the rezoning. The one over on the right, the larger one on the right, on the east side, that was built well after the rezoning.
Did Mr. Hall build that other building then?
I assume so. I think it was sometime between 85 and 95, 96, something like that it was built. So it was after, the rezoning was in 88.
Yeah, it says in the rezoning report that Mr. Hall was under NOV for the construction of a building without a permit. So,
So it has incorrect mapping, but it has incorrect mapping the wrong way.
correct.
Oh.
So the CB where it was at right now, it should include that building at the top right.
No, at the left. Said, yep, it should have gone over this way.
But my concern is more what I think I heard, that CB zone was only to be permitted for the construction of trailers. And if the trailer construction ever went away, the zoning would go away? Can that be done?
That cannot be done.
I didn't think
Now,
so.
what potentially could be done is conditional zoning. And it sounds to me as if the county commission agreed to rezone that property conditioned on the limitation that only that trailer business would be allowed. And once the trailer business went out, no other commercial business would be allowed in that zone. But you can't automatically unzone because that's a legislative act. So as far as the covenants go, those are private agreements between the property owners. If there was a commercial business on this property, they could bring suit for injunctive action to stop it. As far as the reasoning for moving the 100 feet, that's up to the body. But, given that we were thinking that initially it had gone in the other direction, I don't know what justification there would be now. It sounds to me as if the building that we're talking about has never been legally within the zone or allowed per the initial rezoning of the property. So,
Yeah, I don't believe the building that's wishing to get within the zone now was even existed at the time of the initial rezoning, and if it did, it was just being constructed. So the initial commercial use appears to be in the one where the little triangle is in the corner of the CB zone.
It would be of great help to me if we could find some mapping that actually showed the exact correct location of the CB zone. Because if it was further to the left on the screen to include that rectangular building, I don't think 100 feet would get you into the CB zone with the building on the right. But I can't tell without an accurate map.
Yeah, unfortunately, the measurements that are in the rezoning application are measured to a railroad line off to the east that's at a skew to the to the road that kind of wraps around it. So where they measured from is kind of hard to say. But it's supposed to start 255 feet from the railroad right-of-way. And if you measure kind of like if you kind of extend the north side of the Brushy Valley right-of-way over towards the railroad and kind of measure from there, 255 feet gets you pretty darn close to where the zoning matches up with the larger building on the left. So I think that's really what was intended to be rezoned. Otherwise, it gets even pushed further to the west if you use a different line that's.
To Mr. Moyer's point, I don't think even if we could extend it to include the building in question, I'm not sure we would be legally allowed to do that. Maybe I'm hearing it wrong.
There's nothing in the code that restricts you from moving that line 100 feet in any direction you wish. You just have to have, and there's nothing, it's not a variance, so you don't have to meet those requirements for variance. You
Right.
just have to decide that basically it's in the public interest and not violative. Let me pull that language up real quick. Hang on a second. Let's see.
Mr. Moore, while you're looking, do you own the totality of that property at 503?
Yes,
So you own all of the property?
yes, and this is all a brand-new wrinkle for me. I didn't know about the history and any of those issues.
Okay, thank you.
The request actually is because that building that would have formerly housed the trailer building off to the left is more functionally, it's a barn, it's a cinder block, and it's not conditioned in any way. And I'm hoping to open, I do book restoration. My dad lives on that lot, and I'd like to be around the property a lot more. So I've got a very small business that would fit into the front of that building to the right, and I just assumed that sliding things over would satisfy a technicality.
Have your neighbors agreed or said anything? Is there
Well,
any?
I haven't talked to the neighbors about that. The neighbors are not very near. I've met them, but it's not been an issue. I think in the past, I know Mr. Hall had 10 employees at one time and trucks going in and out and all sorts of things, and that's just not what we're doing. But I could certainly pursue that if it was important.
Steve, do you know what section talks about that 100-foot? I'm having trouble finding it here.
It's Appendix A,
Yeah, I got that.
and I think it's I've got it written down, 11.05, is that correct?
Okay, so that's what I was thinking. There's really no requirements or findings you have to make except just your own judgment about whether it ought to be allowed. So,
Well, my question is, if they correct the map, what will that do? Will
well,
the map?
what I'm hearing is if they correct the map, it'll actually move it over to the left from
That's what
where
I
we're
mean.
looking at.
But we have to go with what we know right now, I
Yeah.
think. And what we see right now is if we go 100 feet to the right, it will include the building in question. And what was that reference?
31105.
31105? And
It's
that
on the
was
screen
Appendix
now,
A?
too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that based on the language in Appendix A 3.11.05, that we approve extending the CB zone 100 feet to the, you get the right, to the east.
That would be to the right, yes.
To the right, to the east. And as shown on the zoning map.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 4H is a request of David Hutchins for waiver of front yard setback from 40 feet to 20 feet at 1825 Shriver Road, CLT map 134, parcel 09-406, zone AG in the 4th Commission District.
Is the applicant present? Yes.
I am.
Please state your name and address for the record, please.
I am David Hutchins, address 4625 Newcomb Avenue, Knoxville.
Okay, please give us the reasons for your application.
Okay, this is a flag lot, and it's fairly deep. Off the road, it's over 300 feet along an access easement off the road. Part of that access easement is shared with a house that exists that's in front. That house is being renovated. But the house in front is over 100 feet off of the road, and it's probably 200 feet straight back from that house to the property line, a little over 200 feet. And the drop in elevation from the basement or the lowest floor level in the basement of the upper house to what would be probably the earliest floor elevation we could get is over 30 feet. And it's a single, what they're proposing is they've purchased a set of plans that have an L-shaped perpendicular garage to the living area. The main house, the garage end is closest to that property line, which is considered the front yard setback. And so what happens is it's the best place with the least amount of grade to enter the garage is as close to that access easement. That's a little knoll, I'll say, right there. It's about the flattest spot on the lot, but most of this area, you're going to go down and some severe grade, and there's bottom drainage areas you can see as you get down to the bottom on each of two sides. The lot is heavily wooded, and what happens is that knoll has been cleared at some point to have the trees taken off of it in that area. But the further down you go, the more you get into mature vegetation. So a couple of the issues, one, you're taking out vegetation as you go further down the hill, and then you've either got to spend money on more grade or more building height because you're going to be further up out of the ground based on the configuration of the plan that they've selected, which is economic and smart as far as where the garage is located, least amount of grade. But you start pushing that down the hill, you get into grading costs and/or vertical construction costs. The drain field has already been located opposite where the face of the garage would be, and that area's already been cleared. It's quite possible that there would have to be, you see the north arrow there, the drain field would be to the southeast, right about where the hand is right there. It would run, obviously, parallel to those contours right there. So the further down you go, you might have to, you would probably have to deal with something on the drain field, depending on what the invert is, and the finished floor elevations you might be into a little bit more money in the drain field too. So, and then there's right where that is and all the way around, really below the, what is that, the 890 contour? Or no, that's the, which one is that? Right, the one that goes through the house and wraps around right there. You know, below that, you're into more vegetation. You can see that's, other than the area where that knoll is behind that one contour where the arrow is right now, the rest of the lot is all heavily wooded on all sides, as well as the lots contiguous with the perimeter of this lot.
Any questions from the board? Or, I'm sorry, any statements from codes?
No, we don't have any.
Any questions from the board? I'll just go ahead and say the site is obviously steep. It's not the worst configuration of a house for this site, but it's pretty close, but that's not our problem. The proposed use is not excluded in this zone. The variance is the minimum adjustment necessary for reasonable use of the property. The variance is in harmony with general purposes and intent of this ordinance and doesn't injure a third party. It's not contrary to the public interest, and granting of the variance is in keeping with the spirit of the ordinance. So for those reasons, I will make a motion that this be approved. Motion's been made and seconded. Any opposition? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4I is also a request of David Hutchins. It's for waiver of front yard setback from 25 feet to 15 feet at 0 Ebenezer Road, CLT map 132, parcel 038, zone OA in the 3rd Commission District.
I'm still David Hutchins at 4625 Newcomb Avenue.
I didn't realize you had both of these. I'm sorry.
I'm doing a two for.
So tell us what we need to know about this one.
This is probably the most interesting lot you could ever imagine. It has one of everything on it. That shows as a 75-foot TVA power line easement, which you can't build within. That's the restriction on that side. It's actually 250-foot utility easement. There's a floodway zone in there. That's shown as the approximate location of the floodway. There is a creek in there. It's called 10 Mile Creek in certain locations. It's actually the headwater for it. It's right up at Ebenezer and Kingston Pike. It's actually a spring-fed creek at that point, and then I'm sure it gets stormwater runoff contribution from other locations. But you can see the hatched area, you know, what that does to the floodway zone, which is another, I mean, what happens is we're restricted by the utility easement. We can grade into the utility easement, but we are restricted by the floodway in how far down we can grade. Generally speaking, and I think I submitted a topo on this, the topo at the top is somewhere around a 2.5 to 1, you know, generally. It's pretty steep. It's also heavily wooded. We would like to be able to, you know, maintain as many trees on this side as possible, but, you know, when you're going into a site that's got this much slope on it, we've got to be able to access, get an accessible space, van accessible space in the parking lot closest to the building. And then we've got to be able to distribute the balance of the parking in a reasonable fashion as close to, as possible to the building. So it'll most likely be single loaded angle parking to try and thin up the cross-section to where we've got the least amount of grading, but we're still going to have, it would be perpendicular to that. That configuration was done by someone else, and that goes right down to the flood zone, and you can't put a retaining wall within the right-of-way, within the utility right-of-way. So it's quite the grading opportunity, I can tell you. And so the widest area to get a building in is on that area right there. And if you go, if you look at I think we've given a footprint of 30 feet by 120, about 3,600 square feet in that area. It's just, we can't even get 30 feet wide, up at the, where it begins to narrow. At the other end, I've noted it's 12 and a half feet for what it's worth at the far end, but we're not going to be doing anything down there. We're going to concentrate. It's a law, or it's a office for an accountant, and then he'll have some additional space for expansion in there. So it'll be nearest where that 35 mark is, and go back from there. And I think, as noted by the surveyor, we've got sight distance in both directions. Everything from the street looks good. It's just when you step onto the site, a lot of slope, a lot of trees, and then, of course, you're restricted by the utility setback. So this is a tough one. And sadly, it's, 4 acres? And I don't know how much is buildable, but you can see the sliver that goes along Ebenezer up there, that being about, 12 to 14 feet wide for most of it. I mean, you can't build anything on that. So we're picking the only buildable area that we've got, and we want the flexibility of being able to widen the building there a little bit as it narrows down. And then, I don't know, I mean, I'm an architect, so I'm going to look at a configuration that doesn't just hug, that new setback. We'll do the best we can with it, but there's trees all over in there, and we want to save as many of those as we can. It's a really unique site, and of course, when you put a building on a site, you don't know where the setbacks are. They mark utilities, lines sometimes, but underground petroleum, but there's no setbacks marked here, so you don't really know, from walking on the site what your restrictions are, but it's tough between the slope and vegetation and the setback. And there's just very little usable site here for a building footprint.
Anything from codes on this?
Not at this time.
Any questions or comments from anyone? I need to ask some questions. Couple things, couple clarifications. Your application says that there's a 250-foot wide TVA easement?
That's what I have on a survey that was done by Richard LeMay that shows on here. That I don't know, the one at the top, that one shows 75 feet and shows TVA. There are transmission towers. They're not shown on there. The base of them's not shown on there, but there are transmission towers approximately in the center of that TVA easement that's at the top.
But if it's a 250-foot wide easement?
Well, you can see, you can see the other. I guess, I don't know who else got utilities.
The math doesn't add up. If it's a 255-foot easement?
No, it's a 75 that overlaps a 250, I believe.
Yeah, it does look like there's several transmission lines there.
But we
so I
can't
think it's
can't go below that top 75 line anyway, so it doesn't really. And then when you get into flood zone, then you get into the creek.
Okay, on the same map by LeMay.
Yes, sir.
It shows the face of the buildings right at the 25-foot setback. Is that correct?
The building area.
That was that was before, we were asking for the variance, because we're so narrow on the other end. I'm not sure if you pull that drawing up, I'll tell you. Those are at 25, that is correct.
Okay, so if they meet the 25-foot setback, why do you need a variance?
The topo is unbelievable in there. It drops about across 30 feet, it drops about 15.
So you're wanting to move it closer to the road than 25?
Yes,
Yeah, no.
it's a front yard.
Well, we don't have a drawing showing what you plan to build.
Let's see here. I showed the setback on there.
Yeah.
I've got a drawing that shows the difference. It's an enlarged that shows the difference between what the 15-foot would be. At the time, I hadn't, and I still don't completely know, but what we need is flexibility to be able to manipulate the building in that area.
Well, you understand one of the criteria for an application to this board is a drawing to scale showing what you want to build, where you want to build it, and all of the dimensions that are critical to the decision. Right now, we don't have that. We've got a drawing that shows 4 buildings built right along a 25-foot setback. And from that, it doesn't look like you need a variance.
Well, they're all less, they're 30 at some point, but they're, let's see.
I'm not talking about the width of the property. I'm talking about the face of the buildings.
Yeah, the building's they're 30 feet at one point, but it goes up to 28, but
Can you zoom in on the LeMay and Associates?
excuse me?
Zoom in on that right there. Keep
The
going.
building, what's it going to be built?
You have to have a justification for where you're going to put
Not the
That
top of
map
the
shows,
building.
can you move up a little bit? Yeah, there you go, right there. It shows the 25-foot setback, and right where his hand is, it shows the building faces being right on the 25-foot setback. That tells me, as an engineer, that you don't need a variance to meet the setback because the buildings are on the setback line.
Exactly.
At 30 feet, but on a 2-to-1 slope, and then you got a cross slope, and it's going in more than one direction. You can't do that parking lot. Whoever did that, you can't grade that parking lot because you got to grade into the flood zone. Also, you've got restrictions on what you can do on your handicap space, that you've got to be, you can't do a 10% grade. You could if you had room, you could, but we don't have enough room, to do that, and it's got to be the most accessible space in the parking lot, to the building. That's going to somewhat dictate, what you do with your building. If we can go closer to Ebenezer, it'll help us be able to configure that without having to negotiate so much slope in that area.
Are you saying it's?
But that's not the point of what we're here.
It's really not the point. The point is, you've given us a map that shows that it
Exactly.
can be built within the setback limit. If that map is not correct, it shouldn't be in this package. I'm sorry.
I'm
We-
sorry, I don't understand, Mr. Huff. Tell me again. I mean, we don't have to have a drawing of what's going to be built, we just know where.
No, I'm sorry, but the criteria for submissions of plans for the BZA review include drawings to scale showing the proposed construction. It's in the book.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if this is not what you want to build, it's misleading at best. And
I'll show you what it looks like.
I'm ready to make a motion unless you'd like to come back at a later date and show us what you really want to build. I'll leave that up to you.
Let me ask you this. Can I show you this?
No, sir, I need it to be to scale, showing exactly what you want to build.
Okay. I'll come back at a later date.
So are you requesting a deferral of 60 or 90 days?
30,
30, sorry, 30 days?
yes.
Well, I'd like to have it longer than 30.
I'm sorry.
I think it'd be nice if we had the traffic study too.
That's not an
I
issue.
know,
that
I
we-
understand. It'd be nice though if we had it.
I'll make a motion to approve the deferral of this item for 30 days.
Second.
Ms. Longmire, second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any opposition? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. It'll be deferred until the next monthly meeting.
Now, on the deferral, what I do is I submit to Knox County the drawings.
Right here.
Just send them to Kim, the person you sent the
Okay.
application to. She'll get them in the file for you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I still don't like that.
Yes, they do.
4J is a request of William Zayed for waiver of lot width from 75 feet to 73.50 feet at 0 South North Shore Drive, CLT map 133, Group LB, parcel 011, property zone RA in the 4th Commission District.
Before we get started, I think it's okay if I do this. I'd like to make a motion to combine items 4J and 4K. The issues are essentially the same. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Go ahead, sir.
Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. Here on behalf of the applicant property owner. And Chairman, I'm glad you did that because I was going to have to address them as combined as well. So this property presently consists of 2 tracks along North Shore Drive. It's in the Rocky Hill area, a little bit past the intersection of Morrell, Wrights Ferry, and North Shore, on the, I guess, south of there towards the west. The intent is to subdivide the property into 4 total tracts for the construction of 4 single-family houses. Justification for the variance is based on the topography, especially the steepness of grade located along North Shore, where the boundary of these tracts adjoins North Shore. It drops off fairly steep, fairly quickly. In fact, I think the first 12 feet of the property line there along North Shore into the property, first 12 feet drops 8 feet right at the beginning. So as grounds for the variance, the steepness of the topography, the grade, and the challenges associated therewith. As an additional grounds for the variance, we'd submit that the siting or the sitting of the residence to be constructed thereon. By approving this variance, we're not being approved an additional lot that we wouldn't otherwise be able to get. In the packet, there's I think it's on the sewer easement plan. It shows how technically these lots could be subdivided and meet the requirements, but lots 3 and 4 would be seated or situated differently than lots 1 and 2, and different than all the other houses in the area up and down along North Shore. In fact, I pass this lot multiple times a day. I live in a neighborhood just a little further west on North Shore of this location, pass it several times a day and recognize the steepness every time I'm right there along the frontage. But again, granting this variance, it's the minimum reduction necessary. We're asking for a reduction for the minimum of 75 feet on one of the lots to 73.5 feet, so 1.5 feet, and then from 75 feet to 72.85 feet for the other lot. So very, very minor reduction. Again, believe that there are grounds to support the variance, steepness, seating, situating of the parcels of the residences thereon. No substantial injustice will be done. Will not be against public interest. Isn't in conflict necessarily with the zoning ordinance. and find that it, granting the variance would be appropriate for the property, again, for the grounds and reasons that I've set forth here today. Thank you.
Is there any opposition to this? I forgot to ask that question earlier. Okay. Coach, do you have any?
No, we don't have anything for you.
Any question from the board? I feel like I'm the only one to ask questions now. This map that has draft in red by Adam Schming Land Survey, does this represent what you're wanting to build?
No, sir. The other map that shows it's the final plat of the old Cunningham property.
This one, it's on the screen now, Mr. Huff.
That one.
Second page.
Second page.
I think the confusion of this map shows what they want to do. The other map shows what they could do, that they could meet the zoning ordinance, but it would, the houses wouldn't be oriented facing the street. They would be oriented facing a shared permanent easement.
We'd also have a much steeper driveway there, which obviously presents challenges as well.
That's what they want to do.
Okay, going back to the draft, that when and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing this man's name, Schming Land Surveying. Are both lots 3 and 4? I think that's lot 4. Are those both not oriented the way you want them on this map?
This map is how we want it, that's on the screen, the final plat.
I understand, but this draft, I'm curious about. It's in here for a purpose.
This page.
Just trying to understand.
Right, I think the purpose was, and I didn't submit the application, the purpose was to show this is how it could be subdivided without the variance. And I think it was shown to illustrate that, the grounds for the variance were not gaining an additional lot. We could get 4 lots subdivided, but the challenges associated with the grade and the driveway and the steepness, and that the houses would be situated in a manner inconsistent with the area.
You say houses, which houses? Lots 3 and 4?
Yes,
or-
the ones that would go on lot 3 and 4 under that configuration. But that, again, is just for illustrative purposes.
All the rest of the houses are lined up like this. They would be the only 2 lined up like that. That would be going against what everything else is going against in the neighborhood.
I can't tell from this drawing on the house on lot 3 where the garage is, where the front of the house is. On 4, it's quite obvious, it shows, but lot 3, that information seems to be missing.
Well, it would be on the illustrative purpose map, you have lots 1 and 2 with houses, so 3 and 4 under the requested.
Let's stick with this one. Could you please tell me on lot 3 where the garage, where the front of the house is on lot 3?
Well, there is no existing house right now.
No. If it was built in this configuration, where would the front of the house be?
William Zayitz,
Yes.
322 Nancy Lynn Lane. With Lot 3, our initial, the house layout for that is the garage is on the side. It's a side entry garage, and then the entrance is going to be on the front of the house. The reason why it creates a hardship is, the steepness of the property. It would force us to make a short driveway, which would make it more inclined. With us, considering the idea of, South North Shore is a very high traffic area, I think that if we were to have a variance granted, it would pull our house back to where we could have a further driveway and a less steep of a slope, and would give us the opportunity to kind of make it a safer way of getting out of the property.
So you're saying the garage would be on right where the hand is located?
Yep. That's
And the
where
driveway
garage-
would be there would come down to the shared easement?
Yep. Yeah.
And there's a lot of traffic on that shared easement?
On the easement, no. There's no
Okay,
traffic on the
so
easement.
getting in and out of the property, the driveway is not an issue for traffic?
No, not the driveway, of just the property itself.
Mr. Chairman, that's my district, and that is a very high-trafficked road, especially that part of North Shore.
I appreciate that. That's one of the reasons I wouldn't want to put the garages and the driveways on North Shore Drive. You're defeating the purpose for making the request. Now, if they get what they're asking for, the driveways will be off North Shore.
There will be only two driveway, because I think it, with
The
it.
shared driveway for
Yeah.
lots 1 and 2, shared driveways for lots 3 and 4.
And we would require turnarounds on those driveways. So we would, Knox County, obviously it's a TDOT street, but Knox County would want to see shared driveways per lot and turnarounds, so the people wouldn't be backing out into North Shore Drive.
Right.
I yield the floor. Any further discussion? I won't be making the motion on this one, so Mr. Lovinggood?
I'll make a motion to grant a variance based on topography and best use of property.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, I'll say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
You got time for a cigar now.
Oh, I'll be out there watching Rio play golf. They play Grace Academy and Christian Academy. He goes to Berean Christian Academy. They play at Three Bridges. I'll be smoking a good cigar. I'll be thinking about it. Enjoy. I appreciate it. I'll still be here.
Thank you.
Good job, ladies and gentlemen.
Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that the session of the Knox County Board of Zoning Appeals be ended.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Say no.